an adjustment that was important for him. Ultimately, he got one right over the heart of the plate, and he did not miss it.
Cranked to right by Raul Hernandez, and it's off the wall. Antonio Guerrero scores on an RBI triple for Raul Hernandez.
This was a good job of being able to stay back on an off-speed pitch. You see this here kind of coming.
Okay, folks, welcome to our District 4 Basic Rules Clinic. This is our second one. I am Jim Rose. I'm the California District 4 UIC, and I'll be presenting this tonight. And Don Waddell will be the one who will be taking your questions. So what we ask you to do is keep yourself on mute for the clinic. At the very end, I'm happy to talk live with anyone. If you have any further questions, be happy to answer them. The clinic is being recorded, and like all our clinics, we're going to be putting it on the YouTube channel. And I forgot to correct that again. That should actually be at CAD4, at CAD4, CA California, D District, and 4. So there will be question periods, and there'll be 4 of them at least in this presentation. And there'll be slides that just ask questions. And at that point, we'll stop, and Don will ask me any questions that we have. If you have a question, don't wait for that question period. Just at any point, use the chat function and type in a question, send it only to Don Waddell, and he will collect those for those question periods. And there it is, CAD4. This is our YouTube channel. You can see we already have the first rules clinic up there. And as we go through these rules clinics, we will put those up there also. What is this? This is a basic rules clinic. It's for anybody involved in Little League. We're going to cover rules that are common to all levels of baseball and softball, from minors to seniors. And the emphasis, however, is more on minors and majors baseball. The simple reason is we run a teenage baseball rules clinic, and we also run a softball rules clinic. We want to acquaint you with the rule book, go through safety issues, introduce you to new 2025 rules, which we did last week. We'll have one correction with that when we start off. And last Wednesday of going through the rules, we will go through the minor and major division interleague rules for District 4. So these are our clinic dates. We are on the 12th here. We already did the one on the 5th, and we have 2 more coming up. We also have 2 clinics, one specifically for teenage baseball, one for softball. The teenage baseball clinic is Zoom. It's Thursday, February 20th at 7 o'clock, and there is where you can register for it. And the softball rules clinic, it's going to be live in person on Bissell Lane in Concord, 6:30 to 8:30 on February 24th, a Monday. No registration is required. Just show up to that one. And for both of these are, again, clinics for everybody, managers, coaches, umpires. So what are we going to do tonight? Tonight, we're going to be going through the rule book. We're going to continue through. We started Rule 2 last time, and now we're going to continue with that and go through Rule 7, definitions, beginning and ending the game, batters and runners. We do take out some of the batters and runners because we deal with obstruction and interference and base awards on our 3rd rules clinic. And we highlight the rules with short video clips and answer your questions. That's one of the most important things. So please, if you have questions, legitimate questions, please ask them. Okay, let's start off. So we need to make a correction from last week. And it isn't that we did anything wrong. It's just that Little League has changed a rule in the time that we had our last meeting. So it was stated last week in our rules clinic that when you're using a continuous batting order, there was no longer going to be mandatory play in the regular season. So this rule is found in the printed rule books if you've ordered one of those. Also, if you look in your rule book app or your rule app on your phone, I looked just this morning and guess what? This rule is still there. However, Little League with no explanation has reversed this. And what they're arguing now is that mandatory play is required for continuous batting order in the regular season. And we've received this instruction from Kit Golden, who is the West Region Director. Okay, let's go on with definitions. And this is, as I said before, all these are found in Rule 2 of the rule book, really the heart of the rule book. If you have time just to go through one section, start with Rule 2, learn the definitions. That's the only way you really understand the rest of the rules. Okay, so what is a Little League strike zone? It is from the armpits to the top of the knees. That is, if the ball passes through the armpits or the top of the knees, any part of the ball, and that ball is over home plate. Again, any part of that ball passing through that area. It's when a batter is in a natural stance, and it's the batter's usual stance when swinging at a pitch. So both of these balls would be strikes. They cross part of the plate. I would say in regular season, especially with the lower divisions, you will even want to go a ball on the outside of these and call those strikes. We want the players, we don't want to discourage pitchers. We also want the players to swing at the ball. So remember, when a batter is in a normal stance, is this a batter's normal stance? Well, no, it isn't. So you can't defeat the strike zone by crouching down like this. Generally, I would say as umpires, what you should do is as the player steps up to the plate, watch as they take a practice swing, and that will tell you what their natural stance is. So if that's the strike zone, what is a strike? Okay, it's a strike that crosses through the strike zone and is not struck at. In other words, a called strike by the umpire. Or a pitch that's struck at and missed, that is swing and a miss. Or fouled with less than 2 strikes. If there's 2 strikes on a batter and they foul the ball, it won't be counted as a strike. But the first 2 strikes, yes. A foul tip is a strike, and we'll talk a minute about what a foul tip is. And a foul tip can either be strike 1, 2, or 3. Offering at a bunt, and we'll talk in a minute about what actually is offering at a bunt. Bunting a ball foul with 2 strikes, automatic dead ball, and the batter will be out. That will be their 3rd strike. Now, it's possible for a strike to be called and a batter to be hit. Generally, we think of when a batter's hit, they take first base, but not always. If the ball touches the batter and the batter is swinging, is offering at the ball, then we have a dead ball and it is a strike. Remember this, the hands are not part of the bat. So if a player is swinging the bat and the ball hits them on their hands, that is not considered a foul ball. It did not touch the bat. Hands aren't part of the bat. It'll be a dead ball and it will be a strike. Also, what can be a strike if the pitched ball touches the batter in flight in the strike zone. So here we have a case where a batter is crowding the plate, their hands are over the strike zone, the ball comes in, they don't swing, but the ball hits them in the hand over the strike zone. Again, dead ball, and that will be counted as a strike. The batter does not get their base on this. hopefully something you're noticing with these last two. Anytime a batter is hit, we are going to call time. If they're swinging and they're hit, time. If they're crowding the plate and the ball touches them in flight, time. If it is a hit by pitch that they're going to take their base, we call time. So the first thing to do is kill that play, call time anytime that batter is hit by the ball in the batter's box. So here we're going to see an example of a batter getting hit inside in the strike zone. So remember, this is a ball that's coming in at the armpits, and that is a strike. And the ball is within the width of the plate. You can even see where the catcher is setting up, that ball would be crossing the plate. So this should be a time and a strike. Here we have an example of a batter swinging at a ball and getting hit. So the ball hits their hands. The hands are not part of the bat. What the umpire should immediately do is call time and then call a strike on the batter. If those are strikes, what's a ball? A ball is a pitch that does not enter the strike zone. No part of that ball enters the strike zone, and the ball is not struck out. What if the ball bounces in the dirt and then bounces through the strike zone? That is going to be a ball unless the batter strikes at it. Foul tip. A foul tip is a batted ball that goes sharp and direct. And I want to emphasize that because if the ball hits the bat and goes up in the air a little bit, what we now have is a hit ball, and it can be a foul ball. It can be a pop foul. So if it's caught by the catcher, batter is out. But on a foul tip, the ball is going to go sharp and direct. It then first has to touch the catcher's hand or mitt. It cannot first hit the catcher in the helmet and then drop down into their mitt. That would be a foul ball. So a batted ball, sharp and direct, first touches the catcher's hand or mitt and then is legally caught. A foul tip is a live ball, and runners may advance at their own risk. So here we have an example of a foul tip. The ball is struck, goes sharp and direct. First, in this case, first touches the catcher's glove, and then is legally caught. This is a strike. If this is the third strike, the batter is out. The umpire is going to be making the signal for a foul tip. This is not a foul tip. Sharp and direct, but it does not first go to the catcher's hand or mitt. It first touches the catcher's body, and although he has it in his hand, not a foul tip. Okay, a bunt. A bunt is a batted ball, not swung at, but is intentionally met with the bat and is tapped slowly. So some people talk about a swinging bunt or a slap bunt. Those are actually hits. So this is a case where the bat is intentionally meeting the ball and is tapped slowly. For baseball, just because you hold the bat in the strike zone does not make it an attempted bunt. It does in softball. In softball, you have to retreat. The bat has to retreat for it not to be called a strike. But in baseball, as long as you hold the bat there and don't move it, it's not going to be an attempted bunt. and it'll only be a strike if the ball goes through the strike zone. T-ball, of course, there are no bunts permitted. So here we have, and don't worry about this kid. He actually turned out to be all right. But this is a case where we have a batter who is offering at a pitch with a bunt. So you can see him moving the bat in. He ends up getting hit, but he's moving the bat towards the ball and attempting to hit it. And you can even see him move the bat forward. And so, unfortunately for him, that was a bunt attempt. That goes down as a strike. The umpire is doing the exact right thing, which is the ball hit the batter, and so he is calling time. Okay, let's talk about fair balls, foul balls. So a fair ball, there's a number of ways that a hit ball can be a fair ball. And we're going to see some examples of these in a minute. So a fair ball is a ball that settles on fair territory before first or third base. In other words, it doesn't make it to first or third. It stops moving. It's on fair territory. It's a fair ball. A ball that bounds on or over fair territory past first or third base. It doesn't matter where the ball is going to end up. When it passed first or third base, did it pass over or on foul territory? If it did, it is automatically a fair ball. A ball that first lands on fair territory beyond first or third. This would be a fly ball to the outfield or a line drive to the outfield. As long as it hits in fair territory first, even if it then goes to foul territory, it doesn't matter. It hit fair territory first. It is a fair ball. Remember, we talked about fair territory. The bases, first and third, are in fair territory. So by definition, if the ball touches first or third base, it is a fair ball. If the ball touches a person or their glove or their uniform on or over fair territory, it is a fair ball. It doesn't matter where the player is standing. Where did the ball touch them? Was it on or over fair territory? If so, fair ball. If it passes out of the playing field in flight over fair territory, in other words, a home run, that is a fair ball. So if those are fair balls, what's a foul ball? Really the opposite of just everything I went through. It settles on foul territory before first or third. Instead of dying in fair territory, it dies in foul territory. A bounding ball that goes past first or third, if it bounds past first or third in foul territory, foul ball. A line drive or a fly ball that goes past first or third, but first touches in foul territory, foul ball. Or touches a person or a foreign object. A bat put down on the ground would be a foreign object. Touches a bat or foreign object on or over foul territory, that is a foul ball. So let's see some examples. Settling before first, the ball stops, that's a fair ball. Bounding past first or third. And it doesn't matter if when it first starts to bound, it was in foul territory. Where did it pass first or third? If it passed it in fair territory, fair ball. Bounding past first. Here we have a foul ball because it went past first base in foul territory. Here we have a ball in flight past first. Where does it first land? In fair territory. Even if it dribbles to foul territory, it first touched in fair territory. Here is a case of a ball that is mostly in fair territory, but where did it first touch? It touched in foul territory, therefore a foul ball. Went past first base, first touched in foul territory. Here's a ball that bounds into first, then goes sideways into foul territory. Remember, first and third in fair territory. This is a fair ball. Where did it first touch? In flight, past first or third, fair territory. It's a fair ball. Doesn't matter where it goes after that. Hitting a fielder. It can hit the body, it can hit the glove, but if it touches them in fair territory, we have a fair ball here. This, if it were a batted ball, is a fair ball. Remember, home plate is in fair territory. Determining fair and foul, it again doesn't matter where the fielder is standing, where the majority of their body is. Where does the ball actually first touch that glove? It touches it over fair territory, therefore we have a fair ball. We're assuming this is the first base line here. Likewise, even though that fielder is completely in fair territory, the ball was first contacted in foul territory, over foul territory, therefore it is a foul ball. These are videos, all of these will be fair balls. It doesn't matter where the ball first starts, if it starts bouncing in foul territory. If it's touched before first in fair territory, it's a fair ball. If it touches the base, it's a fair ball. If it bounds over first or third, fair ball. So all of these will be fair balls. And this is why you wait until that ball settles or is touched before you call fair or foul. Here we have it touching third base. This one either bounded over or touched first, therefore fair ball. Touches third, fair ball. This one bounds over first base. Hit in foul territory first. Where did it bound over? In fair territory. And here, a ball in flight past first or third, first touches in fair territory. This touched on the foul line. Remember, the foul line is in fair territory. This is a fair ball. Don, do we have any questions from that segment?
Yeah, Jim, hey, we got one. It doesn't, maybe it's not specific to kind of what you talked about, but let's ask the question. And I know it's going to be covered in future weeks, but here we go. What is the rule if a batted ball hits a base runner that's standing on the base? They get hit by the ball. Is the runner out or safe? So I guess, is that a fair, let's say they're standing on first or third, they get hit. Is that a fair ball? What's the answer?
The answer to that is if they're standing on the base and they get hit by that ball and they're on first base, they're in fair territory. It's an immediate time and it is going to be interference and the runner will be out. So just in general, a base is not a safe sanctuary for a ground ball or a fly ball. It is a safe sanctuary only in one case, and that is on an infield fly. On an infield fly, if a batter is standing on the base and the fly ball hits the runner, I'm sorry, if the runner is standing on a base and it's an infield fly and they're standing on the base and the fly ball hits them, they are not out. And that's the one case where they're not out.
Okay, quick follow-up. So, you talked about balls that settle, fair, foul. What if a ball in flight hits the runner, hits the fielder and goes foul? Assuming the fielder's in fair territory, never hits the ground, but it hits a fielder in fair territory.
It is going to be a fair ball
Okay,
because it touched the fielder on or over fair territory.
right, those are our questions.
Okay, thank you, Don. Okay, going to talk about catch, no catch. This is one of those where I can't emphasize enough. You got to watch, you got to be settled, you got to watch the play, and you do not call it too quickly. So, what is a catch? A catch is an act of a fielder. It's a ball in flight that's either hit or thrown, and the fielder must show secure possession, complete control. They cannot be bobbling it. It must be in their hand or glove. If they trap it against their body, it is not a catch until they actually put that ball in their hand or glove. Also, for a catch, we need something that's called voluntary and intentional release. And this is the reason why we wait to make this call. In other words, that it's possible for a fielder to look like they have possession of the ball, but then drop it. So what we want to see is voluntary and intentional release. We want to see that hand reaching in to pull that ball out. Now, what happens if the fielder has complete possession and control of the ball? They're reaching into the glove to take it out, but they bobble it and it drops to the ground. That will still be considered a catch. We call that a drop on the transfer. And for that one, we're going to give an out sign and we're going to go on the transfer, on the transfer. When will it not be a catch? If simultaneous or immediately this fielder collides with another player, falls on the ground, runs into a fence, and loses the ball, that will be a no catch. So one of the things I hope you recognize from a definition of a catch is there is no time limit for this. Oh, he had the ball for a full second, therefore it's a catch. Time doesn't enter into a catch. So here we have a case of a fielder has possession of the ball, hits the fence, falls to the ground, and then the ball rolls out. This is not a catch. Seems to have possession, but in colliding with the fence and then the ground, the ball comes out. That is no catch. I want you to try to emulate this umpire at third base. He does everything right. So there's going to be a fly ball and he's going to go out on it. He is going to be on the line because the ball is close enough to the line that he may have to make fair or foul call. So he stays on the line. He will stop and he is not moving when the ball is caught by this fielder. And then the best thing he does is his timing. The fielder goes down to the ground and the umpire waits to see that he keeps control and possession of the ball. He looks for voluntary release and only then does he call it a catch. Stopped, watches. Only when there's voluntary release does he make the out call. So try to do what that umpire did. Okay, this is a drop on a transfer. So this would be a catch but then the player just bobbles the ball trying to get it out. It happens very quickly. But as we watch this, secure possession, reaching in to take the ball out, he was looking at the runner and he dropped it. So this would be a catch, this would be an out, and then a drop on the transfer. Infield fly, always fun, especially in Little League, especially at the lower levels. A lot of people will say, oh, we don't call infield fly in the minors. Actually, there's only one level of baseball or softball that you will not call an infield fly, and that's T-ball. So in minors, infield flies should be called. So when do we have an infield fly situation? It's when there are fewer than 2 outs and we have runners at first and second or first, second, and third. If we have that situation, we have an infield fly situation. It needs to be a fair fly ball. It can't be a pop-up that's foul. It cannot be a bunt that goes straight up in the air. It can't be a line drive. So it must be a fair fly ball. It must be able to be caught by a player who was stationed in the infield at the time of the pitch. So we're not going to judge an infield fly by a left fielder or a right fielder running in. It must be caught with what we call ordinary effort. Ordinary effort varies by division. We do not look at the individual player. Oh, that player is horrible, never will catch an infield fly, so we're not going to call it, or that is the player who can catch everything. What you do is, in major division, what is the average? What is an ordinary effort of most players in major division? That is what ordinary effort will be. The sun cannot be a factor if it gets in the fielder's eyes, but if it's a very windy day, especially a blustery windy day, you can consider that as a factor and be a little bit more hesitant on whether to call an infield fly or not. So, what if all these conditions are met? The batter is out, whether the ball is caught or not. So what we do is when we have an infield fly is the umpires will point with their finger up and shout out, infield fly, batter is out. If the ball is around the first base or third base line, we don't know if it'll be fair or foul. We then go infield fly if fair. Because the batter is called out, there is no force. The runners can stay at their bases. The ball is live. And if the runners want to advance, they can advance, but it's at their own risk. And if the fly ball is caught, the runners must tag in order to advance. So here we have a major league game. And we have a runners at first and second with 1 out. We have an infield fly situation. The umpires are going to call an infield fly on this. The ball will not be caught, but the batter is out. So there is no force. So if the runners advance, they're only advancing at their own risk. So the batter is out. And here we have a runner that started to go to second. So they are in jeopardy of being tagged out, and they are tagged out. So even in the major leagues, there's a misunderstanding of the infield fly rule. Sometimes we have, well, anytime we have to decide, should we call an infield fly or not? If we're dealing with the younger divisions, maybe minors, it's going to have to be a ball that's pretty much right to a fielder. They're not going to have to back up or go to their side. As we go up in divisions, ordinary effort is going to be a fielder moving more to get underneath the ball. But there are times when you just should not call an infield fly. So I'm going to show this. This will be seen twice. So the first time I want you to watch the first baseman. And the second time, I want you to watch the second baseman. And in both these cases, they cannot reach this ball with ordinary effort. So watch the first baseman. They have to run and would have to catch it over their head. Now the second baseman would have to cover all that ground and still can't make the catch. So that would be a situation where the infield fly should not be called. By the way, this was a college game and the infield fly was called in this situation. A tag. So there's two kinds of tags, tagging a base and tagging a runner. So when we tag a base, this is like a ball is hit to the infield and the ball is thrown over to first base. First baseman catches it, has their foot on the bag. That is actually a tag of a base by touching the base. It can be done with a body. It can be done with a glove. It can be done with a ball. You can touch the base with your forehead. And I wouldn't advise it, but that would still be touching the base and it would be okay, as long as they are holding the ball in the hand or the glove. That's tagging a base. Tagging a runner is touching the runner with the ball itself or touching the runner with the hand or the glove that holds the ball. So as an umpire, make sure that the player is not tagging the runner with their glove and actually holding the ball in their other hand. What's very important is that in both cases, the fielder must maintain control of the ball throughout the tag process. And we'll see a couple of examples of that. Voluntary release is not required on a tag. It is required on a catch, but it's always good to look for that voluntary release because it really does confirm that control was held throughout the tag process. Remember, as umpires, it's nothing until you call it. Take your time. Make sure the ball isn't dropped. When is it not a tag? If the ball is dislodged by the action of the fielder in touching the runner. In other words, swipe at the fielder and the ball comes shooting out. Or not maintaining control of the ball throughout the tag. And this can be a tag of a base. We'll see an example of that. Or, as I said before, tagging the runner, but the ball is in the other hand. So here is a tag of a base. And remember, it doesn't have to be with the foot. For whatever reason, the umpire called this safe, but it's actually out because they're holding the ball and they can touch that base with anything. They touched it with their glove. That should be an out. This one was actually reversed to an out. Here we have no tag because the ball was dislodged. So on the tag attempt, the ball went flying out. Here we have again, no tag because the ball was dislodged. This is a tag of a base. This is a call that's going to be reversed. Tagged the base ahead of time, seems to have secure possession, but went down to the ground, and the ground caused the ball to come out. therefore didn't have control throughout the tag process. The umpire at first was a little too quick to call out. It went to review. And again, we have an umpire making a call too quick. There's the tag attempt. The ball is then dislodged. The umpire is making an out call and going, oh, no, no, safe, safe. So after the tag, don't look at the base, don't look at the runner, look at the fielder, make sure they maintain control. Okay, we're continuing with definitions. So let's talk about base coaches. You need base coaches. There should be 2 base coaches. They're required when a team is on offense. You cannot have an empty base coach box. For you as umpires, before the innings begins, just stop and survey the field. Make sure there's no equipment left on the field from the last half inning. Check both coaches' boxes. Make sure we have coaches in those boxes. You can have 2 adult base coaches, but you must have a 3rd adult in the dugout. If the team only has 2 adults who are coaches, one of those coaches has to stay in the dugout. Can you have kids that are base coaches? Absolutely. They have to be a uniform player who are playing in the game, and they need to wear a batter's helmet. And base coaches are not allowed to switch positions during an inning. Don't allow it to happen. Illegally batted ball. Legally batted ball is one that's hit by the batter when one or both feet are on the ground entirely outside of the batter's box. So remember, the lines of a batter's box are considered part of that box. So if any part of that foot of 1 foot's in, 1 foot is barely touching that line, that batter is considered inside the batter's box. People will say it's a myth that if your foot is touching home plate when you contact the ball, that it's an illegally batted ball. That's not the case. If your foot is still partially within that batter's box, but if your foot is completely on home plate or completely on the ground outside the batter's box, and you contact the ball, either foul or fair, it doesn't matter, it is an illegally batted ball. What's the penalty? Batter is out and runners have to return to their bases. So here's an example. What makes this an illegally batted ball is not that he's touching home plate, it's that he contacts the ball with 1 foot completely out of the batter's box. Now, what happened here is the umpire did not call it, didn't see what he had done. Why does it matter in this case? The runner's still out, but it's an illegally batted ball. That runner who's now on second base should actually be returned to first base. Okay, an inning. An inning is that portion of the game in which the teams alternate defense, offense, and you have to make 3 outs, and then the half inning changes. The half inning, when does a half inning begin? The instant the last out was made in the last half inning. So the second we have that 3rd out, the next half inning begins. And guess what? The rule book says there should only be 1 minute between half innings. We want to keep the game going. So once that 3rd out is made, we actually want the pitcher pitching, we want to say play in 1 minute for that next half inning to kick off. In the minors division, if you have there's a rule where a half inning is you either have 3 outs or a team scores 5 runs. And that is also a half inning. There's also a league option, and most leagues do it. We have it in our interleague, that if you use that 5-run rule, that the 5-run rule can be suspended in the last inning. And here's where there's confusion. If the umpires decide, okay, this is the 4th inning, this is going to be our last inning because it's starting to get dark, you do not suspend that 5-run rule. It is only in the 6th and subsequent innings can you do that in a minor or major baseball game or softball. Okay, Don, do we have questions on that section?
Jim, we do. We're going to go back here and we're going to cover infield fly. We've got a few questions about infield fly.
Okay.
The first one is, why is it referred to as an infield fly with less than 2 outs versus using terminology of 1 or no outs? Do you know the answer to that?
With fewer than 2 outs versus
No,
1.
with the phrase as less than 2 outs versus using phrase of 1 or no outs.
It's just easier to say, and I wouldn't say, unless if I did say it, I'm sorry, because it should be 2 or fewer outs, because the outs can be counted. So we use the proper word fewer, not less. You can use either one.
Okay. Now we got a question about, you talked about when to call infield fly. So here's the question. So a ball is popped up in the infield near second base and catchable with ordinary effort. It should have been called an infield fly, but by the umpire, but no declaration is made. Therefore, it's not an infield fly, correct? So if it hits the runner standing on second, then that runner is out. Do I have the right understanding?
That is correct. What the manager can then do is call time. The offensive manager can call time and come out and argue their point, or the defensive manager can come out and argue their point. In other words, hey, shouldn't an infield fly been called in that situation? Umpires are allowed to, after the fact, call an infield fly. It's something we never want to do, and it's a mess. But if we realize we should have, we try to then create equity in what we decide.
Okay, I've got a 2-part question here. Is there a height requirement for what constitutes an infield fly?
No, there is not. It just cannot be a line drive, can't be a bunt. We should, there really is none.
Okay. You had the example of the ball was hit to the outfield, but an infield fly was called. Why? How can that be?
If we had, think of it this way, we have a very strong hitter up, and the shortstop is playing back near the grass. And the ball is flied, and it actually does go into the outfield, but the shortstop only has to take 2 steps back to be able to catch it. That would be in the outfield. That would be ordinary effort for an infielder, so it can be called. Little League, generally it's going to be in the infield.
Okay, here's kind of a follow-on to that. People have got a lot of questions about infield fly, Jim.
Hi.
A ball's hit in the infield during that infield fly situation, less than 2 outs, and runners at first and second. And the left fielder runs in and catches the ball behind the shortstop. Is that still an infield fly?
If you judge that the shortstop could have caught the ball with ordinary effort, no, it wouldn't, because that was a fielder caught the ball. The ball can be caught with ordinary effort. I'm blanking on this one, Don.
I think the rule, Jim, is the ball could have been caught as a fly ball in an infield fly situation. Could have been caught by a player in the infield at the time of pitch with ordinary effort.
So it
We
should
have to
be.
deem whether those players who were positioned there, say the shortstop, could they have made the play, if not waved off by the left fielder? You have to judge that, right? And so,
Yeah, listen, in Little League, it's going to be a rarity, but it can happen. And that's exactly the situation where you'd have it, Don, which
okay,
is a outfielder coming in, waving off the shortstop who may have even been camped under the ball, and they get out of the way and the outfielder catches it.
okay. We're gonna leave infield fly. Move to the definition of base coach. What is the penalty if a base coaching box is left empty, or how do you handle that as an umpire?
There is no penalty. There's just one of those, hey, you got to have a base coach. And you wait for them to get a base coach. If they refuse to provide one, if the manager refuses to provide one, I couldn't imagine that happening, but if they did for whatever reason, that would be an ejectable offense by just sort of unsportsmanlike, not following the rules. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. Generally, it's you just call over, hey, you need a base coach.
Okay, those are the questions, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of questions on infield fly. It can lead to some of the greater confusion. The only time I ever got into a yelling match with a coach, and I'm not proud of it whatsoever because I shouldn't have yelled and the coach shouldn't have yelled, but it was over an infield fly. Okay, we're moving out of our definitions. And so we're going to sort of pick up different rules from Rule 4 through Rule 7. We can't go through everything. There are so many rules we are not covering because we only have a limited amount of time. Okay, so let's talk about a continuous batting order. So a continuous batting order is mandatory for the minor division. You can't do a bat 9 traditional batting order. It's optional for all other divisions. Know that in all of our interleague play, we use a continuous batting order. If you use a continuous batting order, every player is considered a starter and everyone bats in order. In other words, if anybody shows up at that game and physically can play the game, they are inserted into the batting order. They can be substituted defensively at any time. In other words, a player can play defense one inning, sit on the bench the next. Play defense the next inning, sit on the bench the next. They do not have to alert the umpire of when manager doesn't have to alert the umpire of when they're putting people in and out. Still, however, remember, they need to meet mandatory play. At some time during that game, they're going to need to get 6 defensive outs. And when it's their turn to bat, they're going to have to come up to bat. What do you do if you're using the continuous batting order and suddenly a player has to leave the game? They have a school function they have to go to, or they become injured or sick. You simply skip over that batting order spot. It is not an out. There is no penalty. And that player, if they're feeling better later or come back from their school function, they can re-enter the game. They go back to that exact spot in the lineup. If you have a late player who shows up, you simply, if you're a manager, you can put that player in at the end of the lineup. If a player shows up late, it's the manager's discretion whether to play that player or not. These are kids. I hope you would do it. If a player shows up late, they do not have to meet mandatory play. What do you do if a player bats, gets on base, but twists their ankle and can't run? They simply are replaced with the last out. Now, what if you are using a traditional batting order, which is called bat nine, where you have 9 players in the batting order, you have players on the bench, and you only go through batters 1 through 9, and then you start again, and the players on the bench don't bat. If you have that situation, know that the starter can be pulled for a substitute before meeting mandatory play. They will at some point need to get mandatory play, but they can be pulled before meeting mandatory play. A starter may re-enter the game provided they re-enter in the same spot in the batting order that they came out of. And they can only come back in when their substitute has met mandatory play, 6 defensive outs, and in this case consecutive, and has batted once. Once that happens, the starter can re-enter in the same spot and the substitute comes out of the game. Once mandatory play has been met by both the starter and the sub, you can freely substitute the two for the rest of the game. You can have one batting, one running, go back and forth between them on defense, whatever you want, once they've both met mandatory play. And the starter and the sub, because they're married in that batting order spot, they cannot be in the game at the same time. There is one exception to that, and I don't have to go through that now, but if you have a question about that, fine. Okay, unannounced substitutions. There's also a lot of confusion about this. There's an assumption that if a substitution is made and it wasn't announced, that and you have a traditional batting order, that it's an illegal substitution. It is not. It's simply called an unannounced substitution. When we have a traditional batting order, we don't like unannounced substitutions, but they are legal. When does a player, when are they considered to have entered the game? If they're a batter, all they have to do is step into the batter's box. They are now the batter. If they're a runner, take the place of a runner on the base. They are now the runner. They are now in the game. A fielder has gone out to the position to play in the field and play starts. They are now in the game as an unannounced substitution. A pitcher who throws one warm-up pitch is now considered the pitcher, and it's an unannounced substitution. Electronic communication. This is not a fun one to deal with, and we have issues with this all the time. But I ask you as umpires, and if your managers or coaches out there, you need to abide by this rule. And that is no team can use electronic equipment to communicate with on-field personnel. If in the umpire's judgment, any player, manager, or coaches uses an electronic communication device during a game, the penalty is ejection from the game. Don't automatically eject. It's usually a manager, it's usually a coach, go up to them, tell them you cannot use that phone for communication as a communication device. If you do it again, I am going to have to eject you. Can then a coach or a manager use a phone? Yes, they can. They cannot use it out on the field. They cannot be in their coaches' boxes and use the phone. They cannot pull out a phone. We do not allow that on the field. And the only reason they can use a phone in the dugout is if they're using it as a scorekeeping or pitch counting app. And that is okay. So if you see a coach out with a phone, go up to them, ask them, are you using that for a scorekeeper app? If they say yes, ask to see it. And that is allowed, but they then cannot communicate with anybody on the field, with anybody outside the field. What's our exception? Our exception is emergency responders. We will allow them to use a phone. In fact, one of the first questions I have, I go up to the coach or manager, I ask them, are you a first responder? If they say no, I'm going to ask them, what are you using your phone for? And then we go from there. Okay, so you can't use this phone to communicate. However, remember our new rule. There is one-way communication allowed between a coach or a manager who are in the dugout to the catcher, but only to call pitches on offense. That's the only time we're going to allow that. Beginning the game. Okay, whiz umpires, what should we do when the game is going to start? You need to have a meeting with your managers, the umpires who are in the game and the two managers. There's going to be nobody else at that plate meeting. There will be no coaches. The coaches are going to be in the dugouts. If the managers want to bring up one of their players to be a captain, that's perfectly fine. But what we do is we meet with the managers, and when the lineups are exchanged, the umpires are now in control of the game. It is their sole authority to call the game for darkness, weather, field conditions. So that's why it's important to have that plate meeting and to get a copy of the lineup. When you have that plate meeting, make sure that your managers, and if they don't, instruct them, hey, next time, make sure that they keep 4 copies of that lineup card together. The lineup card should be filled out completely. What does that mean? We want the team name. We want the date of the game. We want whether that team is home or away. We want the manager's full name. So if they just put Waddell, going to ask them what their first name is. So what I want to do as an umpire, I want to get immediately on a first name basis with those coaches. I will tell them my first name. So we find that games are a lot more civil if we call each other by our first names. What about the players? The players should have a minimum of a first initial and a full last name. So don't have them put Joey, Bobby, Eddie, or Joey V, Bobby S. We need a last name. We need a jersey number, and we need a position number. If they're playing shortstop, it's 6. If they're a pitcher, they're 1. Make sure those are on that lineup card. If they're not, hand your pen to the manager, have them fill that out. And this is important, have everybody else in the dugout when this meeting is going on. They're not hanging out by their dugout. Just tell the manager politely, hey, can you get all of your players and coaches back in the dugout, please? Thank you. This is a lineup card, and I think there are some people on this rules clinic who will get a kick out of this one. But you can see that home team is marked. The name is down, the date is down, the manager's full name is down. We have a first initial and a last name for the players, including the batter in the 6th batting position. We have their position numbers, and we as umpires go through this and we look for any kind of mistakes there might be. We make sure that there are no duplicate numbers of players, and we make sure the positions are correct. And guess what? We have 2 second basemen and we don't have a shortstop. So we're going to ask the manager to correct that. What's a regulation game? Well, in minors and majors, a regulation game is 6 innings, 5.5 innings if the home team is leading. In 50, 70 juniors, seniors, a regulation game is 7 innings. What about a shortened game called by the umpire? It gets dark, it starts to rain. If the game goes through 4 innings or 3.5 innings, if the home team is leading, it is considered a regulation game and it will be included in the books. All games that are ended due to a time limit, and we'll talk about time limits, or that's ended because of a run rule, we'll talk about that, are considered regulation games, no matter how many innings have been completed. So it's possible to have a 2 inning game, which is a regulation game, because it was decided by a time limit. I hope you never have a game like that, but it's theoretically possible. Protests. Managers have a right to protest a game. It's amazing that managers do not protest games more, but they have a right to protest a game. What can they protest over and when must they protest? So the manager can protest a violation or misinterpretation of a playing rule. Say we had 1 out and there was that infield fly that wasn't caught, and the manager came out and said, hey, shouldn't that have been an infield fly? And the umpire goes, oh, infield fly is only if there's 2 outs. Well, that's a misinterpretation of a playing rule. So that can be protested. It must be protested, however, if it's a violation or misinterpretation of a playing rule, it has to be protested before the next pitch, play, or attempted play. What if there is an ineligible pitcher that's used? A pitcher who should have not pitched, but should have been on rest, but they pitched. Or a player who actually is a player on a different team and was playing for that team. If you're going to protest an ineligible pitcher or player, it must be protested before the umpires leave the field at the end of the game. We instruct our umpires, when the game is over, don't run off the field, but once that game ends, leave the field. Judgment calls, safe, out, ball, strike, fair, foul, cannot be protested. Okay, foot in the batter's box. Really a misunderstood rule. And I'll tell you right now that in interleague, this is used for minors and above. For baseball and softball, it's used interleague, majors and above. What the rule states is when a batter first comes up to the batter's box, and when they step a foot into that batter's box, they have to maintain a foot in that batter's box their entire at bat, unless these exceptions happen. And there's a lot of them. You know, they swing at a ball, it's an inside pitch that forces them out, the catcher doesn't catch the ball, time hasn't been called, there's a attempted play at a base, maybe on a steal, the pitcher leaves the mound. It is hard to remember all of these exceptions. So I'll talk in a minute about the easy way to remember this rule. So what happens though if a player should have left their foot in the batter's box, but they didn't? The first time it happens for an at-bat, the umpire will warn the batter. Batter is warned to keep 1 foot in the box. Point to the batter and announce it very loudly so the manager can hear it. I can guarantee you the manager or coach is now going to start policing their player. The next time it happens at the same at bat, the umpire shall call a strike on the batter. So a player violating this rule can actually be called out on strike 3 with only 2 pitches. In majors and minors, the ball is dead. In intermediates and above, the ball is live. So if there is a strike that's called for stepping out, we're not going to add a pitch to the pitch count because the pitcher didn't pitch a pitch. So what's our easy way to remember this rule? It's this. Once that player steps in the box, they have to stay in the box unless the pitch is a called strike, or they must stay in the box if the pitch is a called strike or ball that doesn't force the batter out of the box. So if it's a ball, if it's a called strike, they don't swing, and it's not too far inside that doesn't force them out of the box, they have to stay in the box. And the catcher catches the ball. And the pitcher stays at the mound area. And no further play is made, then the batter has to stay in the box. So here we're going to see an example of an umpire warning a batter who steps out of the box. Umpire's looking at them. You can see that the umpire is pointing and is actually announcing it to the third base coach, who is usually the manager. What I would say, what's wrong with this play is if you're just giving a warning, we do not call time. Just come up as an umpire, point, loudly announce, batter is warned to stay in the box. Only when we're going to call a strike on that batter for doing this, only then will we call time in the minors and majors. Uncaught third strike. This is used for majors and above, and it will be used for majors and above in both softball and baseball interleague. So when do we have the possibility of an uncaught third strike? First base is unoccupied, or there are 2 outs. What does that mean? That means that nobody's on first, then we have an uncaught third strike situation possibility. Or we have 2 outs and there can be a runner at first or not a runner at first. Once again, we have the possibility of a third strike not caught situation. And what does occupied mean? It means at the time of pitch. So sometimes you will have managers who will argue, hey, we didn't have a player at first because he was stealing second base. And so he wasn't on the base when that catcher didn't catch the ball on a third strike. When the pitch was made, was first base occupied or not? That's what matters. Third strike not legally caught. That means it cannot be fielded by the catcher. Remember what a catch is, a ball in flight. So it has to be legally caught. So if we have 2 strikes on the batter and first base is not occupied or there are 2 outs and the catcher does not catch that ball, then the batter can become a runner. At what point does the batter forfeit the opportunity to run? And sometimes you'll be in situations, and what do we do when there's a third strike not caught? We take our arm and we point out to the side and we stand there. And sometimes you'll be in situations where you do that and nobody realizes there's a third strike not caught situation. When do we call that batter out? Well, if they're thrown out at first, if they're tagged, or if they enter the dugout. So it is perfectly legal to have a third strike not caught situation in which the batter doesn't realize it, walks to the third base dugout, gets right to the dugout, doesn't step foot in that dugout, and then suddenly runs across the field to first base, that is entirely legal. Remember, they have to be thrown out at first, they have to be tagged, or they have to enter the dugout. So here we have a very standard third strike not caught situation. See, the umpire is pointing out, and they throw the runner out at first. What do you do if you have that third strike not caught situation, but the batter swings and is hit by the ball? Well, I hate to say it, but you don't do what that umpire did. Because when a batter is hit by the ball, what do you first do? You call time. And then you'll call a strike because the batter swung at the strike. You can see where the batter is kind of confused, doesn't understand. So there should have been a time called. But if a batter is hit on the third strike not caught, they cannot run to first base. Why? Because time is out. What if a batter with backswing in their backswing interferes with the catcher trying to catch the ball? Again, unfortunately, we do not do what this umpire did. When we have a third strike not caught situation and we have backswing interference, which interferes with the catcher to be able to catch that ball, it is an immediate dead ball and the batter is out. Just as a reference, if it's not a third strike uncaught situation and there's backswing interference and we have a runner stealing, the ball remains live. The defense is allowed the chance to throw that runner out. Only after the play is completed will we then put the runner back on the base that they started out on. And we do not call the batter out for this. Don, do we have questions on this segment?
Jim, we have one question that goes back to Rule 3.17, electronic communication.
Okay.
Just for clarity, right? So you did cover the exception in your that talks about communication with the catcher, one-way communication with the catcher. You talked about managers and coaches not being able to use the electronic device on the field. But the question is, can the manager or coach use their phone to access the Little League Rulebook app during the game?
Yes, they can. That is allowed. And because Little League has especially gone over and emphasizing the app and not encouraging people to buy the paper book, absolutely, we allow them to do that. I would like to make one more clarification on the communication device, which is if a coach or a manager is in the dugout and is keeping score on their phone, that is legal. However, if somebody outside the dugout is keeping score on Game Changer, the manager or coach in the dugout cannot access that Game Changer.
Okay, those are the questions.
Okay. We are getting near time, so let's get as far as we can go. Okay, may not even be any farther than this one. Batting out of turn, batting out of order. Um, this one can be complicated. It is something that can come up, and you need to know what to do. And you need to know that there are 3 and 3. In other words, there are 3 terms that you need to know, and there are 3 situations that you need to know. What are the terms you need to know? Proper batter. That is the batter who was supposed to be up to bat. That is called the proper batter. We also have what's called the improper batter. And the improper batter is the batter who came up to bat and shouldn't have been up to bat. Andy is the proper batter, should have been up to bat, but Billy came up to bat instead. Andy's the proper batter, Billy is the improper batter. And then we have what's called a legalized batter. If after an improper batter bats, and then we have the next pitch play or attempted play, after that, that improper batter now becomes the legalized batter. And that's where we go in the lineup after that. Always remember also, if we're going to declare somebody out, we will only declare the proper batter out. That is the person who is declared out, the person who should have come up to bat. So what happens if little Andy is supposed to bat, but he's, busy collecting flies in the dugout, and Billy, hyperactive, jumps up and goes to bat for him. And then all of a sudden, either of the managers discovers that Andy should have been at bat and Billy is at bat. If it's discovered during the at bat, we simply replace the improper batter with the proper batter. Andy, get up in the batter's box. And Andy will assume the count that Billy had. So that's what happens if we have it discovered during an at bat. There are no outs. We're just going to fix it. The second scenario is if we have an improper batter is up to bat. Remember, Andy's supposed to bat, but Billy bats instead, and Billy gets on base or Billy strikes out. And the defense appeals this before the next pitch play or attempted play. What we do is we call the proper batter out. Andy, who never came out of the dugout, is declared out. And anything that happened on that hit, say from Billy, it gets nullified. And since Andy was out, we now have the next batter in the batting order. So it's entirely possible that if Billy follows Andy in the batting order, and Billy got on first base, but they found out that he shouldn't have been batting. It should have been Andy. Andy's declared out. And guess what? Billy is removed from the base and Billy comes up to bat again. So that's our second scenario. Our third scenario is the improper batter becomes a runner or is retired, and the defense doesn't catch this. They don't appeal it before the next pitch play or attempted play. So now Andy should have been up to bat, right? But Billy came up to bat instead, and Billy got a single. And the defense didn't notice this. And now Carl comes up to bat. And there's a pitch to Carl. Well, guess what? Billy was an improper batter, but has now become a legalized batter. And so now the batting order becomes who follows Billy in that batting order. In this case, it happens to be Carl. But what you can't do is you can't send Andy up there. Oh, Andy, you should have batted, so you go up there now. No. And any advances or scores that are due to that batted ball, maybe Billy hit a runner in from third base, It's going to stand. So also remember that when an improper batter is up to bat, if there's a runner on base and they steal, and then we discover, oh, this is an improper batter, that steal still is going to count. Okay. So, Don, we are going to end it there. And do we have a question on this?
Oh, of course we do, Jim. It's the
Okay.
batting out of turn questions. Okay, does the replaced batter inherit the ball strike count if discovered during an at bat?
Yes, they do.
If the proper batter enters in the middle of that improper batter's at bat, we covered the count, but what about either batter getting credit for an at bat if it's as a bat 9 batting order?
Neither will get credit for an at bat, because what you need to do is step into the batter's box with no count, and you must be, get on base, retired, score, or the half inning ends. So neither batter will be credited with an at bat, which technically, if you discover this when during the at bat, you really, if you bring Andy back in to bat for Billy, you have created an illegal substitution if Billy is batting for the first time, because you cannot remove a player from the batter's box if they're batting for the first time.
So we have one more hypothetical kind of question. What if the proper batter is on base and the defensive team appeals? Who enters the batter's box as the new proper batter?
Okay, so we have a improper batter gone on base, and there hasn't been another pitch, I assume.
Right, so they've made a proper appeal.
Okay, so the defense has made a proper appeal, said, hey, Billy should not have been at bat. Andy should have been at bat. And the umpires agree with this, then, which is why you need to keep a copy of that lineup card, by the way, for umpires. You will declare Andy out. And because Andy is declared out, who is the next batter? It is Billy. Billy is going to be removed from the bases, and Billy is going to come up to bat.
Okay, most of the examples of batting out of turn are covered in the rule book, so I guess we won't explore any more hypothetical questions on this. So people
Yeah,
can
and
bring them
just
back
know-
next week if they have some more.
Absolutely. And just know the rule book goes down through this in detail. Okay, that is it for tonight. And you can see we got a lot of fun stuff to be covering next week. So remember, we have our next two rules clinics on the 19th and the 26th. You need to be registered for them. And there's where you register for them. And remember that we have a teenage baseball rules clinic coming up on the 20th and a softball rules clinic coming up on the 24th. Thank you all for showing up, and hopefully we will see you next time.